Hello, Internet. It's Brodigan, and somewhere in that ancient mystic trinity, you get episode 3 of the EveryJoe podcast. Hashtag EJPC. Your political safe spot. No, not a safe spot. That's not a real thing. Safe space. Your political safe space.
That's
It's
not
only
real thing
episode
either.
3. I'm still learning the lingo. I got a good show. I got my Flash t-shirt on because this is the big crossover week. If you're on the Twitters later, I will be live tweeting the Flash tonight. And Arrow, I'm going to be delayed about a half an hour because I have to go to kickboxing first. But we're not going to worry about that. We've got a good show. We've got a newsy show. It's probably going to be a deep show. Let me quickly close down my email so it stops making sounds. There we go. Okay. Our guests. Hello, everyone. To start,
Hello.
our good friend, who, if you've been on the internet lately and if you open a website, there's a 75% chance she's written for it, except for one, which we're not going to get into. Sarah Rumpf, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And also, taking a peek out from behind the curtain, the producer of the EveryJoe podcast.
Hello.
Who's gotten himself involved in the news this week. So we're going to bring him on, and if there's a lot of technical issues, we're going to answer the age-old question. No, he can't produce and be a guest at the same time. Aaron Gardner, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
And of course, our Morse and Sarah leader, through whom all things are possible, political director of the EveryJoe podcast, and the Stephen Queen to our team at Stephen Queen. No, I got the names confused. The Oliver Queen to our team Arrow, Brandon Morse.
Oliver Queen.
Wow.
The first season was really good. Yeah.
Wait, so who does that make
I do
me?
like, I kind of like the Steve McQueen thing, if you want to go back to that.
Do you want to be the Black Canary or Felicity?
Felicity. Laurel is the most annoying character on that show, and I kind of want her to move away.
Okay. I called dibs on... Actually, no, I want to be Cisco. The Cisco's the coolest guy in any of the shows.
I'll agree with that.
I only watched the first season and then got midway through the second and then just kind
Flash
is far superior.
Flash is super.
As soon as they introduced Flash, Flash has been so good that it's completely changed the game of every other comic book TV show.
I have 3 kids, so the only comic book TV I get to watch is either really, really bad or Gotham with my wife, and that's about it.
I heard that got really good last night, and I have been watching it on Netflix, and it has been amazing.
I haven't watched last night yet, so please don't ruin it.
I didn't watch last night yet because I had to record a Charlie Brown special.
I own that.
But yeah, and now here's the awkward segue to from comic books and Charlie Brown to a tragic event in the news. Because there was no other segue, so I'm just going to make things awkward.
Well done.
I'm just going to make things awkward. I'm sure, as everyone knows, has heard about the shooting in Colorado Springs, in or near a Planned Parenthood. And I'm just going to toss to Aaron, and the main reason why he's on the show is because besides being producer extraordinaire, he's a reporter on the scene in Colorado Springs because it happened at his shopping mall. So, Aaron, what's been going on?
Well, basically, Friday afternoon, early morning, afternoon, I was at the King Soopers, which for those of you who aren't out in the Mountain West, that's basically like Kroger's everywhere else. It's a shopping center. You know, they got a liquor store, they got banks, they got everything in this little shopping center. And then maybe 300 to 400 yards away through a dirt lot is a Planned Parenthood, and adjacent behind to that is a medical services building, and in between the two is a Chase Bank that sits in that dirt lot. And basically, I had been there at the King Soopers that day, and I actually ended up taking off and heading home. And then I heard the news of the active shooter situation as I was driving home. I actually pulled around, did a U-turn, pulled into a neighborhood that was right near where the Planned Parenthood shooter was. And I went up a little bit and did a periscope and went a little further and went a little further. And I was up on a deer trail behind the Planned Parenthood when I heard the single shot that rang out like a rifle, in my experience. And I said, okay, well, if I peek my head over this hill and he has a rifle, I could lose my head. So I went back down at that point to the neighborhood that I had parked in. And this is what I saw here, John, if you see the picture on screen now. That's the police had cordoned off the area. I was able to turn left out of there and make my way back around to the media area. But as you can see in that picture, they had guns drawn already, and they were pointing up the hill towards where this Planned Parenthood was. So after that, there was basically a 5-hour standoff. There had been shots fired. One police officer was killed, UCCS college police officer, which they actually worked for the state. So this wasn't just city police who got involved. Throughout the standoff, a couple other people were shot as well who were civilians who were apparently walking towards the Planned Parenthood. Everything that I was able to gather from the immediate scene when I got up there and from the immediate reports that I heard while I was making my way there, it seemed as though, and also from the unofficial scanner chatter that has been out there, it seemed as though the initial shooting had started between one police officer and the shooter, and then an additional police officer made his way in. And that picture, this picture here, with this police cruiser, these two police cruisers, one has the back window shot out, that black one, and the other one is in between it and the Planned Parenthood, which you see in the back left, I believe, of the picture. The taller building in the back, the 3-story building, that's the medical services building that is adjacent to Planned Parenthood. So it appears like the shooting started in between, somewhere in between the Chase Bank and the Planned Parenthood building. The shooter then regressed into the Planned Parenthood and was in there for about 5 hours. After that, he came out and surrendered to the police. The police took him in custody, and after that, all the rumors started swirling pretty badly, and we saw the media run with unconfirmed anonymous reports that still haven't been confirmed by the Colorado Springs Police Department Public Information Office or the Colorado Springs Shooting Joint Information Center that was set up by them. So it's been a wild weekend, and I tried to go back a few times and do periscopes to give people a perspective of the scene and to kind of see that it is, just a 2-minute, or less slow walk between the two areas, just to show what the distance was and what the scene was like. So it's a tragedy, and also it should be noted that the UCCS police officer who was killed, he was also a pastor at a local church, and he will also be having his funeral at New Life Church, which, if you remember, New Life Church on December 9th of, I believe it's 2007, was attacked, and there was a shooting spree that happened there, and a security guard there at the shooting spree ended up killing the assailant in that case. So it's just an interesting side note in all of this.
Okay. And what details have you been able to uncover through your reporting? And I'm going to have to ask that you please frame all your answers so that it's acceptable to my preconceived ideology.
Well, what I've seen so far is that this guy lives 60 miles away from Colorado Springs. Okay, he lives up in the mountains on a pretty desolate piece of land with a camper and a shack, and basically barbed wire fence that surrounds his little diameter of space that he claims as his own, that he purchased, I guess, for a pretty small sum, somewhere under $10,000, I believe he purchased it for. I think it was $6,000, but I don't want to say an exact number on that. So he lives up in this area. He drives 60 miles to the east to Colorado Springs and goes into a Planned Parenthood, stays there for 5 hours and doesn't shoot a single one of the Planned Parenthood staffers or harm them in any significant way when they're in there. And then he comes out, surrenders, and an anonymous official who was named in a report by Wesley Lowry of Washington Post, along with an anonymous Planned Parenthood official, both say that his motives were that he was anti-abortion and all of this, and that he was pro-life and all this. All I can say is I've never seen him at the meetings.
He didn't hurt a single Planned Parenthood employee or anybody who was there. Like, I'm still trying to figure out. It's really sick that they're trying to make themselves the victim here. I mean, this is a police officer got killed.
Yeah, according to officers, law enforcement officials, and I'm not sure if this has even been confirmed or if this is just conjecture. Somebody spreading rumors. Apparently, as they were arresting him and they were putting him in the car or something like that, he said or mumbled, no more baby parts.
No more baby parts. Yeah, and I'll speak on that because here's the thing. That report, the only sourcing for that is an anonymous source. And it's just an anonymous a police official who spoke on the condition of an anonymity because this is an active and pending investigation. Okay, that's your typical line that's used by the media to say, "Hey, some guy said this, and we're going to use it." And here's the thing: the guy who put this out, Wesley Lowery, the first person to publish put this into publication. He's also the same guy who said who said hands up, don't shoot happened. So I mean, people need to seriously consider what they're doing here, and people need to go to the Twitter feed of the @CSPDPIO, and they actually said themselves that any speculation on motive can impact the investigation and prosecution, and that all official information should be coming from CSPDPIO alone and no other sources. So I think it's irresponsible that this is out there, and that I think it's also disgusting that we have Progress Now here in Colorado and NARAL here in Colorado holding press conferences up in Denver, the capital of Colorado, naming names of Republicans who they say have incited this sort of murderous violence through their rhetoric. And quite honestly, that sort of listing and blacklisting of people, that's the real incitement to violence.
Wait, can I get this logic? They're claiming that the Republicans who are pro-life got a crazy man out of the woods to drive 60 miles and shoot a cop.
Right. And this guy drove 60 miles to this Planned Parenthood, and guess what? There was a Planned Parenthood that was closer to him in Salida. So it's an interesting thing, and you know, I'm not a big...
What's the signage like outside that building? Because the Planned Parenthoods that are here that I've driven past in Texas, the sign isn't necessarily very big. Did the guy even know what he was walking into?
You know, I believe he probably did know what he was walking into on the sign, and you know, I'll try and bring up a picture here and see if we can't see it on the sign.
Okay.
You know what? And I don't know that anybody heard me say that because I don't think my mic was on there. But the signage is there, and it's pretty big. Where you don't see signage is out on the street where you enter the complex. That's an interesting thing. They have a sign on the Planned Parenthood building, but on the big moniker for the whole complex, Planned Parenthood isn't listed on there. And one other interesting note on this, and I don't mean to belabor the point or engage in conspiracy theories, but it's an interesting thing to me that on Wednesday, 2 days before the tragedy occurred, the pro-abortion forces, NARAL and them, were agitating and pushing for the Attorney General to proclaim that attacks on Planned Parenthood clinics are domestic incidents of domestic terrorism. So, I mean, there's so many things to this that seem just so too convenient that it makes my spidey senses go up, quite honestly.
It's actually funny that you bring that up. I was actually kind of doing a little research and taking notes about the reaction because honestly, you can kind of tell a lot about a situation by how people react to it, or the media and Democrats and stuff like that. The never let a crisis go to waste rule always applies. And I was just noticing certain things happening. You are correct. When you said earlier about the thing that he apparently mumbled, no more dead baby parts, or no more baby parts, it seemed a little bit too too packaged, if you will.
Right.
It's exactly what we've been saying on Twitter, no more baby parts. You know, that he would just happen to use the same call that many pro-lifers have been using after this whole incident went down seems a little bit too convenient.
Especially when he lived on a plot of land that had no electricity. I mean, sure, we live in a connected world and everything like that, but this guy's LTE bill must have been insane if he was keeping up on Twitter from his little shack up there in Hartselle, Colorado.
And just to back that up a little bit, there's an article that just came out from the New York Times where, I mean, yes, like a lot of their reporting, talking to friends and relatives, said that he was allegedly devoutly Christian and pro-life, but they also said that a family member who lived with him, he was so off the grid, the family member had to leave the house to go into town to make phone calls from a payphone. So I don't quite know how dialed in he is to, like, you know, EveryJoe.com, and
he's keeping up with the hashtags.
Yes. I also noticed this. They held a candlelight vigil for the slain officer and you know, to mourn the deaths of these people and things like that. And at some point in time, I think it was the director of that Planned Parenthood or something of that nature, that area or region, got up and was giving a little speech. And she made it completely political and started talking about women's reproductive rights right in the middle of this candlelight vigil that was there for mourning these dead people.
Yeah, well,
and that kind of
that whole vigil. I mean, I got to tell you, that whole vigil was it's propaganda. That church is one of these, you know. I don't want to name the sect because I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's one of these churches that says there's no problem with abortion, there's no problem with gay marriage, there's no problem with this, there's no problem with that. The only problem they ever seem to have is with the words of Jesus. So
it's a church by rumor.
Not exactly mainstream Christianity.
Yeah, you know,
that church is about as Christian as the shooter.
Right, exactly. And you know, that's the thing of this is, you know, there's so much propaganda going on and spin going on, and it's all being prepared beforehand. Quite honestly, this is rolled out in such an incredibly, there's only one communications professional that I can compare this to, and I'm not going to do it because I don't want to invoke Godwin's law just yet.
Yeah, apparently at this little candlelight vigil, they also pushed gun control. But what's awesome is that apparently this candlelight vigil, not everyone who showed up knew that this was going to be a political rally. You know, apparently one woman bravely kind of stood up in the middle of everything and said, "I'm sorry, I thought we were here to mourn," you know, and said that she was leaving. Yeah, so I think that's awesome. But I mean, you are correct. I think this is. I'm not going to go into conspiracy theory either. I just think it's very knee-jerk of the left to suddenly come up and say, "Oh, look at this." You know, not only did he say something that he probably never said, this happened at a place where right-wingers, you know, they've been wanting to close this down by any means necessary, blah, 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 blah. And now we're, you know, what better way to push an agenda than on top of somebody's blood? Absolutely. I hate to say that, but it's true. And so I feel like this is their perfect opportunity to say all this crap right after somebody died at a candlelight vigil, no less.
Jeez.
Absolutely. You're right. I mean, and they seized upon it immediately. That's the thing of this is, you know, and on Twitter, you know, you guys all follow me on Twitter. You saw what I was doing. I wasn't trying to push it either way. I was trying to be as objective as possible. And I had pro-abortion people attacking me left and right, saying that I was a right-wing nut job, trying to say that it was a bank robbery. And I said, you know, that's not what I've done at all. All I've done is report the facts and disputed anything that hasn't been confirmed yet by the authorities. And it's a sickness in them to drive the narrative above and beyond anything else. Those people who do that sort of stuff, they could have been on the scene there at Planned Parenthood, and they could have been armed with a weapon, and instead they would have pulled out their phones to drive a damn narrative rather than save a life.
Yeah. And that's what I was just about to say too. It's more about a narrative and emotion than it is truth and fact. You know, they would much rather people get upset about the fact that somebody walked into a Planned Parenthood and opened fire than say, well, let's look at the facts. Was he actually going into the Planned Parenthood open fire to go into a Planned Parenthood and open fire?
Right.
You know, was that his intention? Maybe he did know it was a Planned Parenthood. Maybe he did go in there for religious reasons. But let's talk about let's talk about the main fact. How many religious people are going into Planned Parenthoods and shooting, people up? Nobody. This one guy, he's obviously very sick. He's very deranged. He's demented. You know, he's that crazy old guy who lives in a trailer down by the river. You know,
literally,
yeah.
Yes, exactly. You know, so I mean, to sit there and try to drive the narrative, oh, this encompasses every right winger's wish. They're so happy about this. That's not true. And if you go back, the Republican candidates actually condemned the attack on Planned Parenthood. They condemned it. What they didn't do, what they disagreed with, was the fact that rhetoric caused this, which is what they're trying to push. Your
and
rhetoric
they got
caused
attacked
all
for
this.
not saying something immediately when all the news reports were conflicting and there was a million conspiracy theories going around. Well, you know what? I think it's okay that half a dozen presidential candidates didn't jump the gun and start screaming for some sort of narrative when the situation was still live and the guy was still holed up in there.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of the incendiary rhetoric, I would like to read from the Book of Garrity. This is Garrity, chapter 5, verses 25 to 72.
Amen.
In Jim Garrity's name we praise. Amen. So, in the eyes of the left, criticism of Planned Parenthood means something like the shooting in Colorado was bound to happen. But chants where people describe police as pigs and call for them to be fried like bacon doesn't lead to attacks on police. Where an event by Pamela Geller is targeted by an Islamist shooter, it is not really about free speech. It was an exercise in bigotry of hatred, and the attempt to kill her means she has achieved her provocative goal. While at the same time, investigators contend that we may never know what motivated a 24-year-old Mohammed Yosef Abdulaziz to kill 4 Marines and a sailor in an attack on Chattanooga's U.S. Naval Marine Reserve Center last July. A shooting by a diagnosed schizophrenic who believed that grammar was part of a vast government-directed mind control effort is characterized by the Southern Poverty Law Center as having views that are the hallmark of the far right and the militia movement, while the shooter who opened fire in the lobby of a family research council in downtown Washington in 2012, who planned to target the traditional values coalitions next, does not spur any need for a broader discussion or societal lessons about the demonization of political opponents. A California killer who was treated by multiple therapists and already had police checking on him after posting disturbing YouTube videos is a reflection of a sexist society. But there's little reason to ask whether the Oregon shooter's decision to target Christians reflects a broader societal hostility to Christians or whether it reflects his personal allegiance to demons. And while a supremacist, Dylan Roof, committed an act of mass murder in an African-American church, Salon declares that all of white America is complicit, and the Washington Post runs a column declaring 99% of Southern whites will never go into a church, sit down with people, and then massacre them, but that 99% is responsible for the one who does. But the Roanoke shooter's endless sense of grievance and perceptions of racism and homophobia in all his coworkers represents him and him alone. And not to mention the fact that 2 days after the Colorado shooting, the University of Chicago was shut down because of a threat where someone said that he was going to go to the school and purposely kill 16 white people using the same rhetoric from Black Lives Matter. So, Sarah Rumpf, I'm going to throw to you. Does incendiary rhetoric kill people?
This is the biggest bunch of nonsense ever. I mean, the Garland shooting, the Pamela Geller speech, like I had friends that were in that building on lockdown, and like Brandon Darby, who's the Breitbart Texas managing editor and doing a great job with that site. I talked to him and he was like outside trying to like see the protesters when the shooting was going down. It was like my actual friends that were at risk that night. And it's complete, this is internet, right? So I can cuss, right? It's bullshit to say that there's some sort of words causing this. I mean, what happened? We learned this in kindergarten. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's nonsense. They try to blame Sarah Palin for Gabby Giffords because the little target graphic to target congressional districts. Liberals have no sense of humor, no understanding of what a freaking metaphor is. And when they're We have actual cops that have died, and the perpetrators have admitted that they're doing it to get payback. That it's about getting, shooting the cops back. We have actual dead cops because of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's amazing to me that we have, whenever it's an approved group, it's a lone wolf attack. Whenever someone attacks somebody that they don't necessarily agree with or just doesn't fall in line well enough. It's a lone wolf attack if it's a Muslim attack or a Islam attack. If it's a left-wing, purely left-wing crazy, they were just acting. That's not indicative of anybody. He was just crazy.
And they'll go out of their way to find some sort of reason for it. I mean, even Secretary of State John Kerry giving a speech after the Paris attacks that the Charlie Hebdo thing had a justification or an understanding for it. It's like, no, there is never an excuse to kill somebody because of a cartoon. I mean, let's get real. There's no cartoon that can be possibly offensive enough to deserve getting killed. I don't care if it shows your alleged God doing unspeakable carnal acts with your mother. You don't get to murder somebody for it.
Yeah,
this is insane. This was a crazy person in the woods who killed a cop, and the pro-abortion movement is trying to make themselves the victim. I mean, the best proof we have is something he allegedly said to some police source. Yes, because crazy guys out of the woods are known for their clear and proper enunciation of their crazy rants. Do we even know that's what he said? Maybe he was talking about farts instead of parts. It's possible. I'm classing up your podcast.
Yes.
I can tell you this.
We got about 20 minutes left, guys, just so you know.
Okay.
If you want all this rhetoric to stop, you would have to literally strip people of their 1A right. Mm-hmm. Your First Amendment right would have to go bye-bye. So is that what they're suggesting when they say, hey, we need to stop all this rhetoric? Because in the land of the free, where free speech is a right of ours, you can't stop people from saying stuff. And let's face facts, words can hurt, but they can't cause people to suddenly rise up and kill somebody else. They have to make that choice on their own. They can be influenced, but it's not those words coming out of people's mouths are not themselves holding knives and guns and going and stabbing people. People have to make a decision once they hear words, right? Free speech is one of the greatest blessings this earth has ever seen. And to sit there and say, well, all this rhetoric, if we don't stop this rhetoric, then more people are going to die. More you're going to see more situations like this. Bullcrap. I can't go with that. Is that what they're suggesting? That we take away our First Amendment rights? That we take away free speech? Because that seems to be a pattern I see occurring on the left lately, especially in these colleges. Hillary Clinton at one point attacked 1A, which really scared me. What is it that they're suggesting here?
See, I'd argue the exact opposite, that free speech prevents violence. Because when you have the ability to say anything you want and the government isn't going to come arrest me because of whatever I'm saying on this podcast, when you're unhappy with the government and you can publicly criticize your congressman or the member, your state representative, or you can criticize the president publicly and you don't have to worry about being hauled off to jail. When you believe that you have a chance to vote in a fair election, you don't have to violently overthrow the government. You don't have to riot in the streets. Having free speech gives people an outlet and gives people the ability to change things and makes things more the way they want to without having to be violent.
I can agree with that. There was one, you'll have to pardon me for a second while I try to pull it up. C.S. Lewis wrote this amazing quote, and it said, God created things which had free will. That means creatures which can go wrong or right. Some people think they can imagine a creature which was free, but had no possibility of going wrong. But I can't. If a thing is free to be good, it's also free to be bad. And free will is what has made evil possible. Why then did God give free will? Because free will, though it makes evil possible, is also the only thing that makes possible any love or goodness or joy worth having. Sarah, that just kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah,
what you just said. And no, you're correct. I think that, while free speech is dangerous, and let's face facts, freedom is dangerous. there's no getting around that fact. If everything was controlled and safe, then it wouldn't be free. But in these situations, it's important to remember that speech doesn't just incite violence. It's not just something that, can harm. It can, but that's not all it does. In fact, I would say it does inspire a lot more confidence and emotion and goodness than it does, there's some backwoods guy to show Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, I mean, and like the past, couple election cycles, past like century of American politics, we've had about half of the country despising the other party. And still, the elections happen. Bush gets defeated by Clinton, and then a new Bush comes in, and then Obama wins, and the election changes, and a new person gets sworn in, and there's no bloodshed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I as much as I think that a lot of the stuff that you see online is absolutely despicable and it completely creeps me out, I'm glad that the crazy Trump fans can post their white supremacist propaganda and send me the crazy grammatically challenged things that they do, because that means that if they're free to say that, then I'm free to say the things I want to say. And you don't need the First Amendment to protect grandma's cookie recipe and a 6-year-old girl's drawing of a flower. You need it for the ugly, crazy, offensive, shocking, insane, intelligent, wild things. You need it for the nutty stuff.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And no liberals watching us. Sarah is not endorsing white supremacy.
Exact opposite.
Okay, we all hereby renounce and denounce murder, especially murder that's quote unquote in God's name. And,
see, I like the free speech lets those white supremacists put their nutty, awful, hateful stuff on Twitter. So now we know who they are. I mean, there's people that are actually, they were tweeting at a friend of mine using the hashtag oven-worthy, and they're not talking about muffins. They're saying that somebody is somebody who should have. I text my friend. I'm like, is that what I think it is? And he's like, yep. This is the hashtag that these nuts on Twitter are using, oven-worthy, to suggest that somebody should have been thrown in the ovens during the Holocaust. This is a hateful, ugly, nasty, awful thing.
I hate
and it's protected by free speech. That's gross. That is disgusting. But
no, I think that they should be able to say that. I think that they should be able to say that. I want them outed. I want people to see who they are.
This is not somebody who deserves any credibility or any respect at all. When this is your argument, just try to shut somebody down and say you're oven worthy, then great, thank you. I now know you are a despicable, worthless human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even have the word.
Free speech is a mess. Free speech is scary and awful and horrible and wonderful. It's all of those things.
Absolutely it is. I completely agree. But I agree, because, and here's the other thing about free speech. I've noticed that many of the people who you remember back when Dana Lash released that NRA ad?
Yep.
Where she was talking about moms for farms. And some guy came along and created a little video where he photoshopped her After Effects, a hand with holding a gun, and then it ended up shooting Dana in the head, like she committed suicide. And then when he was jumped all, people did jump all over him on it. Besides the left,
people defend their friends.
Yeah, but absolutely. But here's the thing: is like I even at that point in time said, you know what, fine, have that up. I'm glad you made that. I want people to see it. I want people to spread it around, and I want them to know that
exposes exactly how terrible the argument is.
I want them to know that you made it, and I want them to see the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
You people who denounce gun violence and blah 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 are sitting there talking about how funny it would be if gun violence turned on Dana. And I've noticed this is a pattern, though. This is a pattern from the left where people will sit there and denounce. Oh, look at how violent and violent the right wing is, and all their rhetoric is so hateful and blah blah blah. And then they'll turn around and say stuff like, "I hope they get hit by a bus."
Right. Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example, because everything's like, well, we have to get along, and so and so are full of hate. I personally support gay marriage. I have a lot of Christian friends who don't. And at no point have any of them ever told me that I should go die in a puddle of AIDS. Yet if you disagree with Obamacare on Twitter and simply implying that maybe they were less than truthful, I've gotten that attack from someone because I disagree with them on a healthcare policy.
I just need to warn you, John. I've actually placed a bomb in your car.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I'll send my neighbor out. But I mean, off the rails.
John Brodigan conspires to kill neighbor.
Breaking.
No, I'm saying, like, I mean, in the same people claiming that, like, oh, it's all about incendiary rhetoric. According to them, my Christian friend who disagrees with me about marriage is the one full of hate. But them telling me that I should die in a puddle of AIDS because I think the president was less than truthful about Obamacare, YOLO.
FYI, I'm in producer mode. Nobody can hear me right now. We actually have 25 minutes left.
Sorry about that, folks. I feel like earlier today, I think it was yesterday, Leigh Alexander, who ran, I think it was Rock, Paper, Shotgun for a while, if I'm not mistaken. That or Destruct. I can't remember which site. But she was one of the people who were always talking about how she's bullied, how women are bullied, and blah, 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 blah. But if you follow her, like people like her and Brianna Wu and stuff like that, you'll notice that they always follow up their rants about how victimized they are with attacks on people, telling them to light themselves on fire. I hope you get hit by a car.
Oh, that's
I hope
sweet.
you're raped by a well-endowed bear, like poor Leonardo DiCaprio. This seems to me like, here's the thing. I don't mind that stuff. I really don't. And I'm sorry that many people are offended by it. If you're offended by it, then don't be in places where you're going to hear that kind of stuff. That's your choice not to be there. You can't not force everyone else to stop saying what they're going to say because you don't like it.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but I mean, there are things that you still should. I mean, we can't let people walk around and claim victimization when they're not the true victims. I mean,
right.
I think it's pretty clear that the true victims here are I'm going to put them up on screen right now. Officer Swayze,
mm-hmm.
Jennifer Markovsky, and Ka'are Stewart. I mean, those are the real victims here. It's not Planned Parenthood. It's not pro-life supporters. It's not pro-abortion supporters. It's those people who died. And, those people are the real victims. The people of Colorado Springs are victims as well to have their community, which is a pretty damn nice place. If you don't realize it, Colorado Springs is actually pretty awesome. We're mellow, we're laid back. We're not a bunch of judgmental, people walking around thumping people with Bibles. That's just not who we are. And this guy, once again, came from outside of our community, came here and wanted to, cause chaos and inflict terror on people. And for anybody else to claim victimization, I'm gonna be pushing back against that.
As well, you should, and I think that it's good. In fact, I'm glad so far that we have not mentioned the name of the shooter.
I have no intention.
I like this new trend of trying to avoid using the names of the murderers. I mean, we all know, the names of the Columbine killers got repeated over and over, and there's documentation that the same type of mental instability that makes somebody think that it's a good plan to go kill some strangers, they are very attracted to the idea of having some fame after their death and to be glorified like that is exciting. So the more that the media continues to not use these people's names, that will save lives. There's a time when the choice of words can actually save lives, because the science that we have, not the politics and not the Twitter hot takes, but the actual science on the psychology that happens when somebody says, I'm going to go commit a mass murder and kill a bunch of strangers. The fame aspect of it is extraordinarily attractive and becomes bigger in their mind and very influential. So that's important.
And when you apply that to the kind of broader culture that we're beginning to experience as Gen X and Millennial really have taken over with the internet, that 15 minutes of fame and that drive to get there is incredible now. The Kardashian stuff, back
the whole
with
Donald Trump candidacy.
Yeah, the whole Donald Trump candidacy. You know, the back in the day, the Paris Hilton stuff. This is all just that drive towards internet famous. And it doesn't matter, how you get there, it seems, because the ends all just justify the means. But, I didn't even download an image of this guy to put on screen because, I just don't feel like glorifying him. If anybody wants to know what he looked like when he got arrested, it's basically Nick Nolte's mugshot. It's the same. It's that same drunk Nick Nolte looking mugshot. So that's the guy. But I mean, beyond that, we definitely need to make sure we're not glorifying this guy in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I'm really happy that this is happening. I would much rather. I just feel like it's always been a disservice to the victims of these killers to sit there and talk about, or not I've always felt like we're glorifying the killer, that we're kind of shoving the real victims aside, the people who lost their lives, so that we can talk about this guy who that we feel like should be brought forward into the light because he did something heinous, and we all love train wrecks. Yeah. I'm glad that we're taking a new approach to this as a society.
I've also, ever since Columbine, I've always made it a point to never mention the names of any of these killers, because in the case of Columbine, and this is a random broad effect, the two guys, they used to read our wrestling website.
Really?
I didn't even realize this because what happened, the day that it happened, I wasn't paying that close attention to the news because I had my first big assignment, because this one wrestler was getting inducted into the local sports hall of fame, and this was my first big assignment, and I set everything up myself, and I knew there was a shooting. I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on, and another friend from the website happened to live on Long Island, so he came along with me to take pictures, and he asked me, have you heard it? No, I haven't. I saw what happened, and apparently, while I was preparing for my my first big assignment, my editor, who was about to get on a plane to Oklahoma for a business trip, had a voicemail filled with every possible news agency, because we were listed on their website as the top wrestling organization.
Wow.
The top wrestling website. And it still creeps me out a little bit, but ever since then, I've always made it a point, when these killers happen, never, ever, ever mention their names.
Yeah. Yep. But I mean, that's it's not just names. It's, they're always trying to find something. I think people just really want to find something to blame. They want something to throw all their anger at.
You're
in
right.
This case,
you're right. And a point on that I meant to make earlier is, a lot of what we're seeing out of the left and the pro-abortion and all that stuff, that's their projection taking over, because they're so angry and they're looking for someone to blame, and they know that they're partially to blame because of the culture that they've helped create, where life isn't something we value. It's something that can be thrown in a trash can. So
literally,
literally. Yeah. And so a lot of this that we're seeing from the left, this response, this claim to be victims, this push to incite violence against the right, it's projection down the line. Psych 101 Freudian crap.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. You can see that from the progressive left all the time, especially online. Get into an argument with a progressive and watch what happens. They will literally blame you for what they are doing. Yeah. Accuse you directly of what they are doing. So, but I mean, this is always, we've always need something to blame, something to throw our anger at. I think right now, you'll see the left trying to throw anger at the right. The pro-life movement, free speech, all of this stuff are bad guys right now.
The pro-life movement, who's been mad that babies are getting killed, is responsible for. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to what Aaron said, I mean, these people are the ones who are killing people, and yet we're the killers.
Yeah. Literally dismembering babies in a dish on the table. Literally.
We are sitting here. Republican candidates are condemning the killing. right? We as a party are as a planet are condemning.
Why do we have to explain that? Yeah, no, I'm not pro-murder.
And yet, exactly. And yet the entire left is trying to defend the dismemberment of babies.
Let me put it to every one of our viewers this way. We have been live on air for 44 minutes and 52 seconds. And in that period of time, more people were killed in Planned Parenthood clinics than were killed on Friday at the shooting.
Yeah. I mean, that's the perfect way to put it right there. If you're going to sit there and talk about who is a killer and who has hateful rhetoric and stuff like that, let's look no further than the people who are actually murdering people every day. And not just, and I mean like primarily black people. For all the charges of racism thrown at us.
Babies that are, poor black minority babies. That's where they put the clinics. That's who they target in their marketing. And it's absolutely sick. And I'll tell you, a couple of months ago, I was at a forum at the University of Texas, and they had some of the people who were on both sides of the debate for the upcoming Supreme Court case on Texas's abortion law. And hearing the way that these young college students articulate this argument that, well, isn't it better that women have choices and options than these children be born into less than ideal circumstances? Well, this is their actual rhetoric, that it is better to be murdered before you have a chance to live than to be in a single parent household, than if you're not rich, than if there's any sort of health problems. I mean, these people are basically advocating, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama should have been aborted under their own logic. Yeah. Because they were both, broken families and poor. I mean, this is the argument of the left, that if you're not in a perfect, ideal, wealthy family, that you deserve to be killed. And as somebody who, like, I put this on Twitter before, it's not a secret. I'm adopted. My brother is, some of my very best friends are. And so now I look at all these lives that are here because young teenage girls made a choice. It's not a casual thing. It's a serious thing. And the way that the left and the pro-abortion forces talk about this kind of thing, like it's just so casual, is you want to talk about hateful rhetoric? Listen to a college student argue that you should have been killed.
What? Oh yeah, no, I'd say the same thing about people born of rape.
And
I've met a few, and they are happy. Their parents love them. To sit there and it's one thing I've always said. I was like, I would really love just one time to see these people who are like, we should let him abort, or that he should be aborted because I want them to come up to a person who was born of rape and say that to their face. I wish you should be dead. You should. Yeah, I was for your abortion.
You're right, Brandon. And I've written about this before. Back when the whole Todd Aiken thing happened, my mother is a product of rape. And my mother went on to become an ER nurse, a neonatal intensive care nurse, a flight for life nurse. Basically, every single high-speed, low-drag thing that a nurse could do to be out there saving lives, my mother has done. And just recently, last thing she did before she retired was hospice. So throughout her entire career, you got to think about all the people that she impacted, helped through their times, the people she saved. And then you're going to come to me and say, hey, because her father raped her mother in order to create her, all of that is actually bad stuff that happened, and we should wipe it from the history of the earth. I mean, that's so completely insane, but that's what they do. And when I spoke up when the whole Todd Aiken thing happened, I wasn't defending Todd Aiken. I was actually saying that it's stupid that we fall into this trap of not taking hard moral positions and instead try to use pseudoscientific reasoning for these issues of conscience. We should just be clear and say, look, we stand for life. And that's it. Yeah. It's not a matter of science. It's not a matter of anything other than believing that life is given to us and it can't be taken away from us just by anybody for any reason. We have to, due process, application of the law, all these sort of things. If you circumvent life as being an unalienable right, you're done. You're a slave for the rest of your life, and all the other things you're given is just bread and circus.
Well, and the science is on our side too. I mean, all the studies showing how early unborn children feel pain, and they've actually done studies. A big part of why our generation and the generation after has become trending more pro-life is partly because of ultrasounds. People have seen that's not a clump of cells. Very early on, you can tell that's not a giraffe. That's not a daffodil. That's a little tiny human person. It has a head and hands and little feet. It looks like a tiny person very early on. Yes.
You're 100% right, but I'm gonna push back a little bit and disagree with you here a little bit, because science is only what science is when the left accepts the science. So
True.
It is amazing how fast they'll run away, that they will reject science the moment it stops agreeing with them.
And what's also amazing is, Glenn Beck has been pointing this out about Bernie Sanders and why Bernie Sanders is popular. Bernie Sanders keeps on speaking from a moral position on every single thing he talks about. And you know what? The left has trained us on the right that we're not allowed to speak in moral positions. And the reason they don't want us to speak in moral positions is because the majority of America agrees with our moral positions. So we get sidetracked into saying everything about science, and everything about science is good. It buttresses our arguments. But if the core of our argument isn't the moral, conscious, and the reason why life needs to be respected, then the science won't matter, because the left will just take the science and manipulate it and change it into whatever they want it to be.
Well, let me counter you by saying a lot of the early scientists, we've gotten away from this. Science used to be paired with religion quite frequently. And scientists were finding God in their discoveries, that the fact that there was a rhyme and reason to the way that physics equations were getting discovered was viewed as proof of the divine. That the fact that, a sunset is beautiful, the way that light refracts, the way that, animals have certain instincts to care for each other, that this is all proof of the divine.
Right. Well,
and
you have
we've gotten completely away from that. The left has managed to completely segment things away, that they are the only set of morals that count, and science only is bad when it's backing up their own climate change or racism or microaggressions or whatever.
Which always bothered me. Here's the thing, if you're going to sit there and I don't understand how the left can consistently say that God and science are two totally separate things. For me, to hear scientific fact is not disproof of God. It's, so that's how he made it work.
Intelligent design.
And yeah,
well, and I guess I should clarify also. I mean, I totally 100% agree with what you said there, Sarah, but I think there's science, and then there's the industry of science that we're held captive by today. One is an application of a process of discovery, and the other one is a political tool to be wielded by whoever claims it.
It's actually funny, Ted Cruz was on Steven Crowder's podcast not too long ago, and he brought up a really interesting point that I thought was hilarious. You know how they always use the term climate denier?
Yeah.
Okay, so denier is actually a religious term, believe it or not, that they used to basically talk about heretics and stuff like that. So these people who are, I think that they have substituted religion for a different religion.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that, like if you look at, remember the parade, they were bowing down to some statue back at the last climate parade or whatever it was. I forget. There was like a polar bear. So, I think everyone has a God at the end of the day.
No, I forget who it was. There was some like deep philosophical thing I read a couple of years ago that says that like the human brain and the human soul is like hardwired for religious belief. Mm-hmm. And if you look at like all these different cultures that developed independently have very similar kind of creation stories and religious things that they've set up that they did seemingly independently. So there is something within the human mind that wants this. And when you have taken religion out of the colleges, when you've taken religion out of public life and you've tried to minimize it, people still seek it out. So you end up with, we joke about Barack Obama that the left treats him like the Messiah, but look at all those, magazine covers that have like a halo in the picture, and people subconsciously seek out what they need.
Yeah. And the interesting thing though is out of all the political philosophies that are out there, conservatism really is the only one that addresses the fact that there is the physical and the metaphysical, and that you have both parts of those in a human being, and that they have to be addressed in the political ideology and how that actually functions. Everywhere else you don't have that, and that's one of the fatal conceits of all of them, is they believe that they can do these things without God and create heaven on earth and create a utopia, and that's just simply not possible. And that's one thing that conservatism at its roots acknowledges that other philosophies don't.
Yeah, and it's the whole reason we create a government in the first place, is to restrain man's, But 5 minutes. We're not perfect, and I like the fact that we at least on the right, and I'm sure many on the left do. I mean, lately I've been introduced to a lot of people on the left who are not crazy, but
they exist.
Yeah, they do exist, and I'm happy about them. But we have to accept the fact that there will be no perfect world. We cannot legislate perfection.
Yes,
we cannot. We are not machines. In order for that to happen, you'd have to take away free will, which cannot happen. Going back to that C.S. Lewis quote, that's not how we were created.
You can only mitigate against so much before you start infringing upon the liberties of individuals, and that's where you have to draw that line and say, okay, I can. Even if you were to go in, and I'm going to go on a little rabbit hole chase here, but even if you were to go into these arguments right now between Rubio and Cruz over national security, neocon versus isolationists, it's ridiculous, honestly. And these little differences that they have are so different, so closer together than these huge differences we have with everybody else out there. And I lost my train of thought where I was going to tie that back together, but screw it. I just had to get it off my chest.
Well, I mean, we will most likely be discussing that the Cruz Rubio dynamic in depth next week. But since we're running out of time, I just wanted to go around the table and get everyone's closing thoughts. So, ladies first, Sarah.
Thanks for having me on. This was fun. Follow me on Twitter.
Aaron Gardner, producer extraordinaire.
All right. I'm going to use my time to run through the victims' names once more and ask everybody to pray for the community and for the family members who were left behind. Everybody should go out and search on Google as well to find the different funds that have been set up for Officer Garrett Swayze's Survivor Fund, Jennifer Markovsky's Survivor Fund, and also the Survivor Fund for Iraq War veteran Ka'ari Stewart as well, and just for the family members and the community here who are still reeling from all this. So that's what I got.
Brendan Morse, a Boston Fearless leader.
I just wanted to say, I know that there's going to be a lot of knee-jerk reaction when it comes to certain things, free speech. They want to take that. They want to restrict guns after this and stuff like that. Last thing I want to say is what we don't want to do is knee-jerk into giving up our own rights in a moment of passion. Let's be careful and think clearly about what's happening and really take in the facts before we try to act on anything. Yeah. And this kind of goes back to not just this little bit of news that we've been talking about today, but I mean everything: refugees, how we're going to deal with Islam, everything.
Yeah. And for my closing thoughts, I just want to remind everyone to make it a point to shut off social media once in a while. Obviously, don't do it until you finish watching this podcast, tweeting it out, sharing it on Facebook, and then going to EveryJoe.com and clicking a few articles and, more importantly, a few ads. But shut off social media once in a while, because you're not helping anyone sitting there just trying to with a debilitating case of last word itis against other people who have a debilitating case of last word itis, because you're not winning an argument, you're not promoting a message, you're just being annoying and burning yourself out. So shut off the computer once in a while, talk to people IRL. You'd be amazed how many more interesting things they have to talk about besides politics. But that was episode 3. We will see you next week. So for Sarah Rumpf, for Aaron Gardner, for Brendan Morse, I'm Brodigan. This has been the EveryJoe podcast. Hashtag EJPC, EveryJoe.com. Again, EveryJoe.com. We will see you next week. Peace.
All righty.